maximize this. I want to I'm going to bring up WordPad too. Yes. Oh, I had coffee and it didn't help. It just made me sleepy.
You may have attention deficit disorder.
Possibly.
Sleep disorder.
Yeah, there's that too. I was used to. Right? Yeah.
Steve,
Yeah.
my SQL.
SQL won't connect.
He's on.
I only know because I want to go. And apparently power went out.
You're right. So I think
The clocks were on the same. Like, I've never heard of them. I think that might be because I live in the basement and there's very little space between my window and my neighbor's house.
So we're going to talk security today. And the very first thing I want to do is actually think about what kind of security you would want in this database. And then we'll go through actually setting up some of this and showing how to do it. If you think of Metro Alt, or not Metro Alt, Community Assist, think about for your assignment. Who are the people that are involved in this? What are the different kinds of users?
Donors.
All right, so yeah, let's bring up, I'm just gonna, so we got donors,
Employees.
employees. We may have, it probably doesn't hurt to have, what? Yeah, the requesters, administrators, okay. And then the, let's call them clients, the people requesting grants. Anyone else? Now, in the database itself, there probably would be nobody else. If you were to have like the website, you might have a group that would be just, developers? Well, not the developers, although yes, actually. I was thinking of the people that just would peruse it, would still need to see some data. So like guests or something. There is a guest user, by the way, that's built in that you should never activate. But so when you think about these, what kinds of permissions, and I'm getting a little ahead because we're going to go through authentication first, but what kinds of permissions would the donors need? So if you think about permissions, what are the kinds of permissions you can have? Right, basically read, write, and execute, although that's putting it more in the Linux. Yeah. What are the SQL equivalents? Select is read, insert, and update are both write. Also probably delete. And then there's also execute. Okay. There are actually, yeah, I have executed twice. There is also create, alter, and drop. Any other permissions? Now, the thing is, these are the permissions. I'm not saying donors should have all those permissions. Let me just put that.
Probably put all of those under administrator.
They could all go under administrator. Yeah, we could cut it and put it under administrator. And I just maybe up above donors, just so that we know that they're the available permissions. There are actually a couple of others that you can do, but they're server level, not database level. So donors should be able to, one of the things you can do, except you can't insert a table in here, can you? If you look at the tables themselves, so they should be able to, business rules they don't need to see. That's just actually sort of informational for the database. They might want to be able to see, do they want to be able to see contact information? They might want to update contact. So probably select an update contact. For their own records, right? They shouldn't be able to update and probably not even select other people's contact information. What about donation? I'm just going through the tables. What do they need to be able to do in donation? What?
Can they add?
Yeah, so they need to be able to insert into it. They donations, right? They don't necessarily need to see what other people are donating, but they need to see, they should be able to see what they've donated. Does that make sense? For employees, what do you think? What should they do with employees, if anything? They probably should be able to select them. That's sort of a business thing where they want to, and it may be that they don't need to see everything about the employee. Like they don't necessarily need to see, I mean, you could decide what they could see, whether hire date is legitimate or not. Our employee table isn't very rich. I'm kind of assuming there'd be a separate database with all the human resources stuff. But if they don't necessarily need to see your salary, you know, when they're selecting. So like if you had your social security and your home address and all, I need to see all of that, right? So and we're going to type stuff up. So some information, but not all. I'm not sure if we'll do this whole thing through. Employee position, they don't really need to see. Grant requests, they don't need to see. Now, they might want to see some views from those, right? So you might want to do, so if somebody is thinking about donating, it would be useful if they could see, kind of like the reporting stuff we were doing this morning, how many grants have been given out. You know, you might have all sorts of reports and information from there to donate. Actually doing something with the money, and you're not a scam and just running away. You know, so you might, there should be some views. I'll just put that, views of summary information for grants or grant request. And they don't need to see the review or the thing at all. They probably need to select on the grant type. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just trying to get a pattern here. Login history table, they don't ever need to see, but they need an insert. Right, because if they log in, they need to be able to, it should insert their record to that. Person and person address, they will need select. Yeah, insert on login history table. again, they don't ever need to see it. So select on, where am I? I'm skipping nothing on grant review, nothing on grant review comment or grant request error, which is from our other thing. They should be able to select grant type so they can see the different types. From person, they should be able to see certain views of the person table. Again, if they can see the employees, the employee names are in person, their own information is in person, they should be able to update their own. Same with person address. I don't know that they would need to see much other than their own. Yeah. Positions, I don't know that they need to see those, although they could. You could give them a select on position if they. I don't see that does harm. The test tables are irrelevant, but you see sort of the pattern there. Typically, when you do the security, you should come up with a plan, and you should think about, probably less quickly than this, what is it that who are the users, right? So we did that sort of. Donors, employees, administrators, clients, possibly guests. What permissions should each of those users have on each table and on the database in general? Does that make sense? That's sort of what you do, is sort of a minimal security plan. And it probably should be done as you're creating the database. Does that make sense? I don't want to go through all of it, although I might have you guys do this with Metro Alt, just to set up a more, kind of a comprehensive security plan, and then we'll try to implement it. So one of the first things we need to do is to figure out how we do the users. I'm going to do most of them as SQL Server logins, but I'll show you how to do a Windows login first. All right, so kind of as a backtrack there, we have a security plan. Now we need to start setting it up. If you look down here at the server level, under security, there are logins. And there's some logins there. A lot of these are system logins. We are logged in as whatever your computer is, Steve, right? Your computer's probably all the same as mine. That's a Windows user login. Logins give you access to the server. They do not give you access to the databases. Does that make sense? So you have a login, and that login is mapped to a user, and the user is the database level. So you have a server level login, and then a user at the database level. All of these are Windows users except SA, which is has a little red arrow down by it because it's disabled. And in general, it's a good idea to keep the SA disabled.
What is SA?
Sir, it's system administrator. If you do need to enable it, you should give it a horrific password. This is the main line of attack for a lot of people. They test to see if there's an SA account. When Microsoft used to shift out SQL Server up before 2005, the SA account was wide open and the password was password. And they assumed that database administrators would be smart enough to change that, but a lot of them didn't. And so a lot of databases were hacked because people would just say SA password and they got in. And not only do they get in as system administrator. So now it ships with this account disabled. And you should create another account that's an administrator. So when we installed Windows, remember it asked us to make an account or to have an account. We use the current Windows account. More typically, what you would have done is created a Windows account for the administrator that wasn't your current account, right? Because in this class, we're always logging in as administrator. That's actually, it's really convenient for what we're doing in terms of learning it. But in the industry terms, it's a really horrible practice. You should always log in with less permissions than the administrator unless you have to be administrator. Does that make sense? Because just to minimize harm. So if all you're doing is doing some queries on stuff, or all you need to do is run the profiler or set up things, you can do that with lesser permissions than administrator. With administrative permissions, I can drop a database. It doesn't matter how much data is in it, it'll just say fine, it'll just go away. And there's no getting it back. There's no undo. You can do irreparable harm as an administrator, even if you're doing it by accident. So if you come in late at night, you're really tired, and you go in as administrator, it's not that hard to totally screw up. Or if you got a page while you're out at a bar all night, you come in and you're a little bit tipsy, again, you can do a lot of damage just by accident, and you might not be able to recover from it. So you shouldn't log in as administrator unless you have to. That being said, we are logged in as administrator. So I usually don't do this because it's a pain in the butt, but I'm going to try to make a Windows user and show you how to log in how to create a Windows user. And then from then on, we'll do just SQL Server users. So there's basically two kinds of users. Windows users, which are Windows accounts that are mapped to SQL Server, and then SQL Server users, which are more the username password combination. If you have a mixed environment where people are coming in, from Macs and Linux and other things, then you need to use a SQL Server. Right? You have to have a Windows account to come in as a Windows user. But if you have a system that's all Windows users, you can map Active Directory accounts. You don't have to map just individual Windows users. You can match groups. You can actually match Active Directory groups as a user. So everybody that belongs to that group will have a similar permissions. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So to create a new user, let's see if I can remember. It's interesting. My machine has, all settings will do it, I think. Accounts. Now, if we can't make one here, I don't think I can make it here. There's no way to make a new account here. Oh, yeah, there is. Add an account. Oh, that's email, calendar, and contacts. All right, let's go make an account. Can't do it here. I know where you can. I'm going to right-click, go to Computer Management. I'm going to go to Local Users and Groups. We're going to add a user. So where I got here, right-click on the Windows thing, Computer Management, Local Users and Groups, and we're going to create a user. You can use your own name if you really want to map yourself so you don't have to log in as Steve. But probably, who do I want to make as a user? Typically, what? Okay. Yeah.
Create account in System Manager and the mystery control panel.
What?
With the control panel and also you can use account.
Yeah, actually, you can't do it in control panel. can change your account, you can manage another account, but it doesn't have created an account. So you three will have to do it in a. I'm not going to give them a description. I'm also not going to make me change my password. And I'm going to just make the password password. So actually I made it that password, but whatever you want to do. The trouble is if you just make it password, I think it will fail because what? Yeah. It'll fail if it doesn't meet the criterion, and the criterion is things like one number and caps and etc. So I think that's okay. I'm going to create that account. Did it make it? I don't think it did.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is, Bart Simpson. Now, when the properties for this, we could say member of. I could have done this before probably. I'm going to do advanced and find now. And I think what I want, we could make it, I'm looking for administrators. All right, so let's go back. So I did, I found my user. I right-clicked, I did properties. I went to member of, and I'm going to did add, and then I did advanced, and then I did find. And I'm just going to make them an administrator. Usually a dumb idea for all the same reasons that I mentioned above. Yeah.
I don't see the.
What version of Windows do you? I don't mean that. Not all versions of Windows have this ability. I mean, there's what are the editions of Windows, not the version?
Well, they should all have that.
I don't know if they do actually. I'm not sure if it's in anything under the enterprise level.
I think it is.
I don't know. So I had to upgrade to the enterprise level to create a user, and then, well, actually, no, I created it on my daughter's. I'm sure that was just professional. But it isn't the folder isn't there. I've encountered that before where it wasn't there.
Possible it's Windows 10 not creating any local users because it likes to do all the Microsoft account stuff now.
Yeah, but even so, you can just watch. This isn't going to be an important part of this.
We might not be able to get into this because we don't have direct permissions.
No, you should have the permissions.
Okay.
What I was going to do as administrators, although you could do, I mean, you might see there's several things there. IIS users, if you have people coming in from the internet, you can assign them all to the same group if you want. IIS users is literally the group of people that are coming in through the internet portal, particularly through IIS. And then there's also SQL Server, a couple of SQL Server groups which will become relevant later. Unfortunately, we let the computer name them. All right, but I will just do administrators. If I can do it, you should be able to. You have the same permissions I do. So Bart Simpson is an administrator. Yeah. So this is the main administrator Steve is there. Steve is also a member of the administration. If we looked at groups, administrators, it shows this is an equal part of security for a database. You do the windows that the database is on, right? Or if it's a different server, as the data, then you have to. So the ports, you have to have firewalls. You have to protect the ports in and out. Be careful of that. You have to do a whole networking component to this, which is actually my weak. You have to protect it. So I'm going to do this. Things today I'm going to do graphically, and then I'll do them in the SQL is faster, more efficient. Has the graph in Windows does not make them anything. Right? It doesn't map the permissions and the Windows permissions to SQL Server. It maps the user, and then you assign them permissions. And so you can be a full administrator and have 0 permissions on the server. So this is a Windows authentication. So I'm just going to search, and again, advanced, and then I'm going to look for users. So again, find now. I don't know why they have such a kind of so many sub-window commands here. So to go back over it again, search, advanced, find now, and then what we want to do is find Bart. There is Bart Simpson. I'm going to do OK, and I'm going to do OK. And so it's the computer name and Simpson. Do now, as we create this, you can assign a server role. All right, so these don't affect any databases. You don't have any permissions in databases with these server roles. And I'm going to talk about making roles in a moment. But there's bulk administrator. Basically, that only gives you permissions to handle bulk inserts. It's literally all you can do with that permission. DB creator allows you to create databases. Doesn't allow you to populate them or read them, but allows you to make them. Disk administrator allows you to do things like backup and restore. Else, distribute functions, things like that. Process, you kill processes or start processes. Public, everybody is a member of public, but public has no permissions whatsoever except to connect. Secure server administrator, setup administrator, and sys administrator, which I. So these are built-in roles. You can make your own roles. I'm not going to worry about server level roles. We're just going to go through to the thing. There's also you. And at this point, you can actually create your user and assign them to a database. So I'm going to assign them to Community Assist. I suppose I should have assigned to Community Assist Snapshot. So what it's going to do is it's going to give them a connection to these databases. Down here, you have some database roles that are pre-built. I'm not going to use them because I'm going to make my own. I was going to look and see what they. Oh well, take too long to get in there. basically, I'm not sure what access, I could look at the backup operator, let you back up the database. Data reading for a program, like I'm writing some software database. I often check database reader, database writer, but it's real permissions that's not wise because it's specific. It allows you to read or write to any table in the database. But for testing purposes, sometimes it's really easy to just check those two. You can also deny them to the right to read and deny them the right to write, although I don't know why. Any permission you haven't granted, they don't have. So if you don't check these two are irrelevant anyway because they've already been denied. You can make them the database owner or the security administrator in there. Again, I'm not going to use any of those groups. I'm going to do OK. Well, so securables, those are for the database thing. I'm just curious what the securable, oh, so these are things that you can grant them permissions to mess with. Some of these permissions to alter any availability group, alter any connection, alter any credential, or any database, alter any endpoint. These are all things you can grant if you want to. For certain, again, part of the purpose of this user. The snapshot, it won't let me do snapshot. So, oh, it existed. It actually created it.
You uncheck the, maybe keep the.
Oh, I did, didn't I? But it says it already exists. I scripted it so you can see what a login for Windows looks like, because this is probably the only login for Windows we'll do. Create login, desktop, F9 HTTP/Simpson from Windows with default database master. Actually, it says use community assist snapshot, which is not what we want. Just community assist. And then it creates a user. And again, I think it already exists. Wonder if it did that part. No, it did. But
I'm getting an error. I think I didn't check the right thing for securables.
I didn't do anything in securables.
Okay, so I'll uncheck this. And go to
I just looking. Just cancel that. Go back up to user mapping and uncheck the snapshot. That's where the error is coming from. And then it's saying that it already exists. I think it created the user. So if I refresh over here, there is a Simpson. You might have to create the user. You might actually need to run this because I screwed up on the dialog box. The user may not be there. But you can also do that graphically. So I'm going to go down up to Community Assist, Databases, Community Assist Security. And I'm going to open that, and we'll look at users. And I have Simpson there, but that's because I ran this line. I had Community Assist Snapshot there in the script. But the way you can add them if they're not there is right-click, New User. So the user type is a Windows user. And you just click Advanced, Find Now.
I already in there, so
Yeah, you don't need to do this. I'm not going to finish this. And the login name, you'd have to go find the logins, browse, Simpson we need. There it is. And we don't need to give it a default schema at this point. I'll talk about schemas in a bit. Oops, I didn't want to do OK. That's the error because they already exist. All right, so there's a login to the security, two security folders. There's the folder way down here. This is the server level security, and it has logins. These are the connection to the server. And then the security up here is the user for the database. And it's mapped. It's twinned in our map to the one for the server. First you log into the server, and then that server database is on this. And we system so that if I were to change my and log into this database, I wouldn't be able to do much. Do you want to do that real quick just to see?
Mhm.
It's a little bit weird. I need to, I don't need to sign out, but notice that Bart Simpson is in my list now. So I'm going to click over to that. I need to give Bart Simpson's password. And I'll go in. Here's the bad part.
Which is why I'm not doing this.
Well, and that's why we're only doing it once. Also, when we're dealing with this, it's a real pain in the butt when you're making multiple logins to constantly be shifting users. It just is a pain. So we'll be using SQL Server users after this. But it's creating a new profile. I did this on my daughter's laptop because I needed a laptop for Amazon thing I went to. And I don't own a laptop anymore. I spent all my money on a nice desktop instead. So I created a user for me on there. All right, let's start. Are we ready? All right, so I should have a new SQL Server Management Studio, but maybe not. SQL Server. It'll also probably say it's for first. Maybe. Yep, first use. Right.
Can you help me with that? Do you know what it's means?
Oh, we still need to do the up here. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to. I notice I can connect. When I look at the databases, I can see them all. But let's say if I try to open up, it's not accessible is all it says. And if I try to, it's not. I don't have any permission. Accessible. There's no stars on any cancel from say from actually cancel. I need this to be connected. Connection, connect. Oh, you know why it probably won't connect? Because I have no permissions to query. I mean, literally the only permit to the database. Now watch, I've frozen it up. Just a second to respond. All right, failing that now, it's totally. That's another reason not to do multiple windows. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to
Still running with the new user. Pretty fast.
well, I mean, the point of this is just that there is a new user. It has a server user, how to do that, and we'll set up some useful things. What? I'm not going to do that now. No. All right. Don't you love the little rolling? There, that went. But I still haven't got it to close this. I wonder who came up with that little icon for the wait.
I don't know, but I like that one better than that spinning rainbow wheel.
Must be something else.
Uh,
That might be it. That was an hourglass. I don't want to use up to OneDrive right now. God. I think part of why this is freezing is that it's okay. That came up. I don't want to leave this open while I go to the other one because of resources. There, it closed. Been a lot long watching things. You're still doing that?
yeah, authentication.
Yes, we're going to do that, but I wanted to show you how to do a Windows authentication. Log off of here eventually. Okay, so that went away. They won't come back. Yeah, yeah. If you not letting you log out either. It's just made a
Getting tired of.
I don't want to. We can if we need to. You did shut it. But you managed to log out.
I don't know if the English is able.
Another reason not to do. Okay, so that gave me the right click, which I never did. Wow. Well, you know what? So my big hope here is that I didn't scramble something. Like a authentication of users about roles and authentication. Because doing a Windows user is such a hassle, but I thought you should see how to make a Windows user. And
And in SQL, you imported that agency.
yeah. So I killed it and I'm coming back. Let's see how that works. The whiteboard. Please don't. I'm sure it's not happy about the way. Go to Steve. Windows does do some under the hood when it has to. Sometimes it fails. Okay, so let's bring up SQL Server. With luck, it isn't damaged. Except all right, are we going to connect? I guess it could be good. I mean, you guys might appreciate that I have as many problems as you do. I can understand the service being stopped this time after crashing it the way it did. But okay, I think we're almost ready to go again. Okay, so down in the security, just to make sure I didn't lose the login. Nope, Simpson is still there. So we talked about the basically like what the donor would do. One of the things in Community Assist, and if we look at the tables and we look at person, actually let's just do a quick select from person. So that's because I didn't run that. All right, so one of the things in this, notice that they have a password in here. This is where they log in. They log in differently. They're not logging in through the server here. They still have to log in through the server, right? And then they have another login. This login would probably be controlled by the software, right? You'd create a login form and you'd log in, but the connection to the database would already have been made. So there would already be a login and a user. That's kind of generic, and then this would be the individual logins inside the database. Does that make sense to you? So what I'm going to do, and I'll do this first one again with the graphics, and then I'll do it by SQL after. I'm going to right-click on security for the database. Well, first, actually, I need to do a login. So let's go down to this security folder, that one. New login.
The security and community assist or not?
The one that's on the server first,
The server.
right? And in fact, we can do it all there. We're going to change it to a SQL Server authentication. And I'm going to create the login name as I'm going to call it donor login. So everybody that comes through the software intending to donate or working with the donor will log in as a donor login. And how does that'll have to be controlled by the software, right? The website or whatever. So if you go in and you say you want to donate, then it will connect to the database or the donor login. Then you can create your account. And when you create your account, once you're in the login as a donor, then you'll need to, your authentication will need to be passed to this. Does that make sense? This probably happens in the background so that they don't even know they're being logged in through this donor login. And then they would enter their username and password that's in this table. I've done this in 172, right? So there was a generic login, and then they do this. So we're going to create a donor login. We need to give it a password, and I'm going to do a couple of things that you should never do. I'm not going to enforce password policy. I'm not going to enforce password expiration, and I'm not going to make them change it at the last time. So I'm going to uncheck those. Never do what?
So we do uncheck those guys, and then our own, we never do that.
You should never do that.
Yeah.
Just for this test. The reason is that you really should, so when you type in a password, typically what you do, something like, password or something, and then the very first time, it's kind of like what you did in these labs. The very first time you log in, you have to change it. And then when you change it, the administrator will never know what it is. There's no way for them to know what it is. So even the administrator doesn't know your password. Yeah.
Question. So if you were creating like a website that connects to a SQL backend, Would you also use these options but create an ungodly password?
For like the donor login or something like that.
Yeah, like if you're going through a donor portal on the community.
So I would make it a fairly strong password, but you're going to have to pass that password. Does that make sense?
Like in a big file.
Right. Yeah, you could put it in a config file, or you could put it somewhere where it wouldn't be in the code itself. And I would probably make it fairly strong. One of the things that's going to be is because the website will be logging in, we're not going to build the website, but because it would be logging in as a donor login, it should have limited permissions that only belong to the donor, and I'm going to show you how to set that up here in a moment. So I'm going to do password, just all lowercase passwords. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did.
Again, you should always enforce the password things. Although this is a generic login, you might enforce the password policy, but you might not do the expiration, because this will probably be a software login, really. And you don't want to have to change it at that point.
Service account.
What?
A service account.
Yeah, it's basically a service account the way I'm setting it up. If we want to do user mapping, we could do it to, again, community assist. And again, I'm not going to give it any permissions. We'll do that ourselves with the roles. This will actually create a user in community assist that is mapped to this login. So I'm going to do OK. And now we have a donor login in security. And we have a donor login. I mapped it to community assist. So if we go to the security and yes, I did. I mapped it to community assist. Notice there's a donor login. There's a donor login here. Now again, they have 0 permissions.
Okay. For languages.
Yeah. So they've been mapped. They have access to community assist in the sense that they can connect. They have no permissions to do anything. So there's a couple of things that we could do. Let's, I think one of the things was we can create a schema for donors. And I'm not going to do everything that would belong to it, but I'm going to create schema donors. Anybody, let's call it donors schema. And it's unhappy because it wants to go there. Anybody know what a schema is here? We haven't talked about it this quarter. I did a little other
Schema.
It's a group of objects. So one of the strategies that you can use is you can create a series of views and stored procedures that all go with the donor. Does that make sense? I'm going to just do a couple. I'm going to create the schema first. And I'm going to show you why you might want to do this, because when we create a role, so a schema is a collection of objects that go together. A role is a collection of permissions. When we create a role, if we've created the schema ahead of time, we can assign the permissions to the schema and have to assign it to every individual table, every individual view, etc. Does that make sense? Of permissions. So I am going to create some things, some views for the donor. So let's do, I'm trying to think. You probably want like a stored procedure for inserting a donation. I think there is one. Donation programmability. No. I don't know if I want to write this right now. Do I want to write this? Here, let's do a real simple stored procedure. I'm going to, and I ran the schema one, right? So create proc USP, actually, so we want donor schema. USP dot view donations. It's going to take a parameter of person key. So the donor's person key would come in, and they'll only get to see, select donation date. No, I need as. Donation date, donation amount. It's probably all we need to know about a donation, right? Yeah.
We don't need to find the data type.
Oh, we do. Thank you. I would have figured that out when it failed. Is there anything else we need to know from donation? Nope, that's it. So, and then where person key equals at person key. So when I do, oh, I forgot from. Or from donation. All right. When I do this donor schema dot, that makes this stored procedure belong to that schema, that collection of objects. So this stored procedure will belong to that schema. So I'm going to create that. We could test it if you want, but I'm pretty sure that'll work. It's about as simple as they get. Let's create a view for this thing too. What else would they have a view of? Create. Yeah.
It's telling me it doesn't exist or I don't have permission to use the donor schema.
So did you run create schema, donor schema? Make sure you ran it. So I'm going to create another view. What would we want this to be a view of? Let's just do like grant type. And that's all I'm going to do. Again, my point isn't to make really fix here, but one of the strategies in a database when you're securing it is to create views and stored procedures for everything that user would do. So again, it would probably make sense to create a stored procedure for adding a new donation. It would probably be good. You'd also probably have a stored procedure to allow the user to register, right? And you'd have a stored procedure to allow the user to update their own stuff. And you don't give them access to the tables directly. You give them access to the objects, the stored procedures, and the views, so that they really cannot access, they don't have raw access to the tables. It's a lot safer to do that. Let's create one more schema view. I don't know what this would be. Create view. Did I run this one? Yeah, okay. Donor schema. And what else could they just look at? So,
When there are look grant requests.
no, I don't think the donors should need to be able to see the requests.
So you know how to do it.
Well, so they don't get a choice as to what requests their donations go to.
That's why you need that.
Yeah, they just contribute and then it's distributed. And so, I mean, you might want to give them, again, you could create a schema where maybe I'll change the name of one of the schemas up above for the summary information. So when we're talking about grants, they might want to know how the money is distributed, who gets the money and what kind of things are being granted. But I'm just going to do select person last name. And let's alias these. Probably should capitalize. Not that I, again, the point isn't how elegant these are, it's just would we, so let's look under employee. We don't need to show their salary. You might show their hire date. And then I'm going to maybe show their position name. And then we need to do some inner joins from person. Oh. Is there a position? There is a position and then there's an employee position, right?
That's not for office when it has person key.
Yeah, but there is even here, there's a person and then there's employee and there's an employee position here too. So I think I need to go to employee position first. I didn't really mean to make this this elaborate. Oh yeah, we have two P's. And this shouldn't be for person key. Just testing it works. I'll give you a second on that one, although it's the point that it's not the query that's the point. So we now have three things for this. So if I go to I'm not going to change that. So but just over here, if we go down to
I'm just curious.
okay, 1 second. I just want to close the tables. Then go to views. Notice we've got some donor schema views. I think belong to the thing, and there'll be a stored procedure too. What is it not like? Oh, actually, so it should be.
Yeah, right.
It should be on employee. It should be on position key equals key position
Oh,
key.
God.
No, I understand. I was doing that a little bit too. So I did make this view. Back. So if I refresh this a little bit, we might even have, now there's just the two. And if I go down to programmability, stored procedures, and refresh that, we have a donor schema USP view. So the donor schema is just like DBO, right? DBO is a schema. It's the owner schema, database owner schema. These are the donor schemas there. So let's create, we've got a schema now. We've got a person and we've created a user, right? And for donors, created a schema for donors. Let's create a role.
That was the donor login, right?
Yeah, so we got a login for donors, we've got a schema for donors, and then I'm just going to create a role. Create role, and I'm going to call it role. And that's actually all the syntax there is for creating a role. Now I will show you how to do this graphically too. I never do this graphically, but I'll show you in a moment. So I'm going to execute that. Give some permissions to donor role. So basically all we've got is execute and select, right? Say grant, execute, select on schema : to do this. See, to donor. That looks better with that. Okay, it's not complaining. I think that'll work. It did. Hit the execute and select on the schema to the donor role. Our user still doesn't have any permissions on anything. We're going to add the person to does that make sense? So the nice thing about making a schema, the reason I wanted to show do it, otherwise you individual permissions on each table, each view, you know. This makes it a little bit easier to do that.
So you've given this particular group or schema some views and some statements, features, some permissions, and now you're going to add new users.
Right. So I'm going to, actually, it's not grant this time, alter donor role, add member, I'm curious. I think it's add member. Donor login. I think. Oh, alter role. Thank you. Okay, so donor login should be a member of donor role now.
And then you make that a member of the schema.
Well, so this role
Oh,
has
the schema.
permissions on the schema. So as a member of this role, this donor login has permissions on these permissions on the schema. Does that make sense? This could take a long time. I mean, if you were really thinking this through, which you should, you know, to figure out what permissions go with what things, what elements should take up, you know, consist of the schema. You can skip the schema altogether. As I said, you can just create roles. And the roles would just be a collection of permissions. But again, if you do that, then you'd have to say that they have insert, select, and etc. on this table, insert, select on that table. And you'd have to do each table and each view and each stored procedure. You'd have to have like a whole bundle, a fairly long bundle of permissions to do that. Whereas if you do it with the schema, you can just say the whole schema has these permissions. They have these permissions on the schema.
And every single role
And
in that schema.
and everybody in that role, yeah, has permissions to do that. Yeah, it adds a layer. It makes setting this up simpler, but actually setting up the schema is a lot of work. But it can be good work in the sense that you're creating a layer between the user and the database. Database administrators don't trust users generally.
Admins in general don't.
What?
Admins in general.
Yeah. So now all of this would work. I'm going to show you a couple of things. One is I'm going to go down to roles. So under security, there are roles in the database. And it probably, yeah, it does. It's showing the donor role. Did you make the? It already exists.
Yeah, but then that's the sheet is the same as the
So did you do the,
system permission.
or it does not exist? You did the grant exec, right? You did the grant above it. This line above it. I don't think that matters. Okay, so it says it doesn't exist either. Okay, that's good. The donor login doesn't exist. Did you do the donor login?
Say something.
From security.
Yeah, so I don't see the donor login. You may have done it as a login.
There's another one, yeah, I did that.
So we can fix that real quickly.
That's where I did that.
Right, in logins. Donor login. So there's one thing what we did. Let's go to properties. We do user mapping. What did this say? It says, how do I map it? Okay. Reference not set to analysis. Okay, cancel that. All right, so let's go to users. Security for the database. Okay. User. let's log in and user. Why is it not giving this? Oh, the username, we just give it, just type in whatever. Try donor login. And then we need to map this to oh, sure. Just do it with the mouse like this.
Okay.
And then do OK, and then try. Oops. What does it not like?
Well, I mean, just,
Well, the login did this, but we're in the users one, right?
first one to assist you.
Oh, it is already there. So what is the? I don't know. One of the other thing may have added it even though through an error.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So what I was going to do is in the donor role, I was going to go to properties just to show you. So here's a role member donor login. If you go to securables, it'll show you the schema. And if you look down in the schema, you'll see that there is select and execute. Those permissions are checked. Now we could have gone in here graphically, and I'll do this for the next role. I'll just make another role. You could come in here and you can set these permissions by yourself. I actually, as I said, I find it a lot more efficient to use the SQL.
I don't know where you're at.
So you open the, role
So what I
property.
did is I took the role, the donor role.
I don't, where's that?
The donor role is under security. So you got users and then you got roles. And then I right, if it's not there, refresh.
It's in database roles.
No, well, yeah, database roles,
Okay, got it.
donor role. Properties. And then I went to securables. And then you can see that the two permissions that we gave it are checked. Now you could go in here, you could do all of this graphically. But again, I find it much more efficient and to do it with SQL.
You save before you go to, database role.
Well, so I didn't save anything, I just ran the SQL.
So my database role property is empty.
So you might want to refresh. Do you have a donor role? Your database roles, it shouldn't be empty.
It is.
It can't be empty. Because there's a whole bunch of pre-built ones. But this, okay, so how do you run this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
No, the role is there. But this stuff has to be- it's just- and then it's, yeah, but that's not it. So we need,
As a new user, one dot name.
right, but that's a Windows user, right? And that was it. You're going to log in under, is there? No, I don't see it.
Oh, so you add them on one, don't log in.
Yeah, so it has to be there as a user and Just real quickly, I wanted to mention, so grant gives you permission, right? If I wanted to go through and do, so we got, I'm not sure why things are double. Some of these are doubled with the DBO beside them. Permission to alter, permission to control, to delete, to execute, permission to insert, select, take ownership, update. So there are all these different permissions. Again, I'm not sure why these are doubled with the DBO. Grant gives you the permission, right? But you don't have a permission if it isn't granted. So deny is kind of irrelevant, and it's not ANSI standard. There's no reason to ever deny a permission because if you don't grant it, it is denied. Does that make sense? With grant means that if you're in a stored procedure or something, and the stored procedure was from, like, written by DBO or something, they can give a grant, a temporary grant, to have permissions on this. Does that make sense? Like within a stored procedure or something, you give them temporary grant to execute something or temporary grant to select something, just for the context of the stored procedure. Sometimes that's necessary. That's what with grant does. It's like in Unix when you switch user, SU to some other user for just a minute. You can kind of do that with the with grant. The deny, as I said, you can. The only reason you would deny something is if some other thing gave them permission. But even so, because you could be a member of more than one role, the way that works is that if you're a member of multiple roles, you're given the least permissions. So if one role says you can select from something and another role says you can't, you can't. So you're always given the least permissions. Microsoft used to do it most. So if one role said you could do it and another role said you couldn't, you could. But now they always go with the more restricted, which is safer. It's a bit of a pain, though, because you might have one user that you want to give a couple of extra permissions to beyond the role. But if you give them the role and it's denied in the role, they can't. So you might have to create a role that's just has a couple more permissions and only assign them to that. So you can do, as I said, you can do all of these permissions here. Now, if we were to log in now, it would fail. Anybody know why? If we were to log in as our donor user?
The scheme hasn't actually been selected.
What?
When I go to general and it says scheme is owned by this role, then the scheme is not on it. It's not checked.
Oh, so the owner is probably DBO.
Okay. That's also not checked.
Yeah, it should be all right. The main reason that we can't do this is actually on the server level. I'm going to right click on the server and do properties. I'm going to do security. So I know I did that fast. Yeah, right click on the server, very topmost thing. Properties, security. We are on Windows authentication mode, right? That means that's the only mode of authentication that's going to allow. Right? So if we want to change it to allow both SQL Server and Windows authentication mode. By default, although you did have a choice, I don't know if you remember when we installed, there was a choice as to what method you want. I always just leave it at Windows because otherwise you have to give it a password right then. So I'm going to do, we're going to switch it to SQL Server and Windows. Couple of things. When I do OK there, it gives me this warning. Some of your configuration changes will not take effect until SQL Server is restarted. This actually could be a big deal if your production server, taking the server offline even for a couple of minutes could be a big deal. That's why they warn you. And if it is, if you know that you're going to need SQL Server logins, you might do it at the install point or before you put it in production anyway. So I'm going to do OK. Now, closing the Management Studio does not restart SQL Server. It's just a shell. But you can right-click on the server, again, topmost folder, and notice that it has stop and it has restart. So I'm just going to click on restart. This actually does stop the server, so it gives you all sorts of warnings, and then it will restart. If you do not restart, you still won't be able to log in with SQL Server logins. So did you guys get that? Do you need me to go through it again? So I collapsed everything down to the server. I'm not going to disconnect from that one, but I'm going to connect again. So I click connect, database engine, and then I'm going to, instead of Windows authentication, I'll do SQL Server authentication. And I'm going to do donor login. And my password was just password. Connect, and I'm connected. And notice a couple of things. One, it says donor login here. Right, up here I'm logged in as Steve. Down here it's donor login. You can have multiple logins going at the same time. This is actually really useful for testing stuff. You know, so that you, up here I'm still admin, so if it isn't working down here, I can go up here and change it, right? Also, a lot of times they use the Management Studio to monitor many servers at the same time, right? And you can connect, we have only 2 instances of the same server with different logins, but you can log into different servers and you can log into different logins within that server. But this allows you to test permissions. So I can open up databases. And again, I can see them all, but if I try to go to Metro Alt, it's not accessible. When I open up Community Assist, I don't see any tables. But if I go into Views, I will see the ones that belong to the schema. Right? And if I go into Programmability and Store Procedures, I will see the one because I have Execute on that. I have Select on these. Yeah.
I need to log into donor login. I'm not sure how you do that.
So you just log in. Go, actually, go up above that. Command. Database engine. Change this to SQL Server. And then your donor login and your password. Yeah. I don't know. Now you stopped it. Did you restart it? And it started successfully. And it started successfully. But what I'm wondering is the SQL Server is running. It said it made a connection. So it just says a login failed. Did you get your password right? Let's connect under Windows authentication again. Just connect. Right click the properties. Security. So this is SQL Server. Okay. Maybe restart one more time. Yeah, right click. Let's do a quick restart. So once, and else. I'm sure 54. Just in case I couldn't do it right. Actually, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. So that we have a database and SQL Server Security. So the donor login will be done by it is case sensitive in the clearinghouse. I have no idea. All right, so if I, now, a couple of things to be aware of. This is still, this window, query window, is still logged into Steve. And you can tell that right here, Steve. Yeah.
I forgot to tell you, I wasn't able to log in.
Okay, so let's see. Change it to Windows. I need to SQL Server.
Yeah, I did. I tried all the different passwords and I did none.
It might be. Did you restart the server?
I can do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again because. So do restart. And yes. And yes. And yes, I don't know why that's again. Let me try one more. Oh, it's attempting to. Okay, so it looks like it worked. Again, I would connect above it.
From here?
Yeah,
Maybe.
database engine. Actually, you should be able to connect it to it. There you go. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm going to come down Community Assist here, and I'm going to do a new query. And I want to make sure, notice it says donor login, right? Because otherwise, if you use the other one, all your permissions are still admin privileges. So this one should have permissions only in Community Assist. If I try to select star from person, object person, right? So I don't have any permissions to do that. If I want to select from employees, actually is it VW? I didn't, I just called it employees, didn't I? Do I need to do donor? I shouldn't need to do donor schema,
That's where.
but let's do it anyway. Usually you don't have to do.
You don't need BW.
Yeah, but I don't think my name here doesn't seem to have VW on it. Oh, I spelled schema wrong. But even that shouldn't. See, I didn't put VW on it for whatever reason.
I did, but it's not taking it.
Is that my only view?
Donor schema.dw underscore employees worked.
Grab types of probably work. I wonder what's.
I think you need to use community assist first.
No, it says it's in Community Assist.
Mine works.
Yeah, that's
I shouldn't have to do donor schema, but let me try it. It did work there, though. And not underscore, not dot. So it wants the donor schema. I think I know why. It's because we added them to the role, but not to the schema. Because you can say that their default schema is something,
And that way you would.
and then you wouldn't have to type in donor schema. We can do that with, I'm going to do one other person, then we might call it a day. Actually, I need a number that's a donor. Select star. Is it 3 that has?
Change that, though, Karen.
Not from within this. Yeah, from the other one you could. All right, so those are basically what I can do inside of there. So the gist of this in terms of security is that you can create a schema and a set of objects and a role that gives permissions to that schema, and you can create it so that when a person logs in, now again, they may never actually see this environment. They're probably coming through a web page or some kind of application. But you can limit what they can see and what they can do. The trick is to develop the schema to be rich enough that it gives donors everything they need to do and no more. When you do it with a grant, the people are requesting a grant, you have to give them all the permissions they need to request a grant. You don't want to give them any more permissions than that, but you need to do that. Employees, you want to give them, quite a few permissions. You can create an employee schema, or you might even actually give them some of the permissions on the objects themselves. Does that make sense? So the things that we've kind of talked about in a it seems like to me, fairly chaotic way today. So there's authentication, which is about logins and users. And I'll do a couple of other things, like show you how to hash the password if they're logging into the table and things. I don't know that I'll do it today, and then there is creating schemas, and then creating roles, and then assigning permissions. And we did it as assigning permissions to schema, and then adding people to the roles. What? Yeah. So the user logins and users are mapped. Couple of other just general things. It is almost always better to do your permissions in roles rather than assign them to individual users. It's just really hard to maintain if you have individual users have individual permissions. It's also so much easier for maintenance if all you have to do is drop somebody from a role or add them to a role. You get a new employee, you don't have to go in and configure everything for them. You just add them to a role that corresponds to their position, and they're already set to go. So it just makes a lot of sense to do roles. Schema, in this sense, are unique to Microsoft, although it is an ANSI spec. It's just that other databases haven't implemented schema that way. Typically, in other databases, schema is a result of, if you can create objects when you log in, they're attached to your login. The schema is attached to your login. So things that you create when you're logged in belong to your schema. That's how most databases implement it. It's not how Microsoft does. Most database management systems will have roles and users and logins. Those are pretty pretty standard for permission setup. I think that's enough for the day. I do want to show one other thing, I think. Since it's not quite 3, and we actually go to almost 4. But I'm burnt out. How are you guys doing? I don't know how I would do if we actually did the whole. I mean, we could use the time in some ways, but the whole 6 hours, basically, it would be a lot. When I was younger, I did a few 40-hour-a-week seminar kinds of things, and those are exhausting. They pay good money, though. They pay like $1,000 a day, so. But I was not meant for those. You have to be flashy. That's not my style. You have to have really great handouts because they figure they're paying that much money. They need to. So anyway, what I wanted to show was, so I did some of these. It was actually kind of, as I said, kind of chaotic. The way you create a user, let's create a new user. I'm going to mix and match a little bit from what we did.
Where are you? In Steve, or-
I'm in Steve. You won't have permission to create user in the other one. First we'll create a login. Let's do it employee login.
Wait, what are you doing?
Because we did it graphically with the GUI. I'm going to create a login with password equal password. That's creating, if I run that, it'll create a user called, a login called employee login.
Hang on, I did that.
Password of PSSO.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just a password.
What I want, okay?
Yeah.
I did the process of creating a login with GUI. And it looks different from yours.
What do you mean? Does it look? Oh yeah, if you script it. The
Yes.
scripted gives you some other stuff, right?
Yeah, it gave me an N before those current here, those quotation marks, and then it gave me default database, check expiration.
Well, so yeah, you can have lots of other options. I've already made this.
Does it have defaults?
I could do default database. I think it's underscore, right?
Yeah, default underscore.
Now, it won't let me make this again, but default database equals community assist. And that should be single quoted. And I think you can do, well, I'm not sure what else can you do. Actually, default.
Mine is inside of square brackets, not.
Yeah. But I mean, you could add that. I don't know if it matters because it doesn't actually create the user.
Are we creating a SQL user here?
Yeah, this is a SQL user. So it's creating it with the script. I just wanted to show the
So
script.
you're not using the login use.
So you could add that, but I didn't. Yeah, this is a SQL login. And then you could, I'm going to create schema, employee schema. Although I should actually, and it just wants a go. And the reason I did that right now is I'm going to say create user for, so user employee, and we could say employee log, it doesn't have to have the same name, for employee login. Oh, the other thing I need to do here, I'm in Community Assist, but it would be really important to make sure you were in Community Assist. Create user for employee login with no, with default, I think it's underscore schema, employee schema. Now let me look at this to see why it's unhappy. No, that's not it. I'm pretty sure it's with. And maybe this just is equal. Oh, for login. There we go. So this creates a use login with, and it gives it a default schema, which we didn't do last time, which would make it so that they belong to the employee schema, and they wouldn't have the right donor. So if I do this, this will go in.
So it's the user referral already exists in the current database.
Yeah, you can't rerun this. The default database grid I added, but it won't run again.
I didn't. So you're showing us how to do this.
So this is just, this would be creating a SQL
Should you
login.
write that?
This is optional, right? And I added it later, so it's not there. Use Community Assist, create the employee schema, create user employee login to map to this login. It doesn't have to have the same name. You could say employee user. With default schema, and again, with default schema is optional, but it does put them as part of that schema. Weirdly, putting them as part of the schema does not give them permissions on the schema yet. So they still don't have any permissions in it. It's just where they belong. They're one of the objects with the other objects. You always do login and then user. If you want schema, you do the schema. I did the schema first so that I could associate the user with the schema. We did this. This is just what we did before, except I think we did that part graphically, right, by doing the login.
How do we check the schema?
So if you go into here, so most of it's in the security folder for the database. That's the login. I want to go back up to Community Assist. Oh, and I want to do it under Steve. So Community Assist. So if you go down to security, so we've got users, and notice that there is now, actually let me refresh. There's now an employee login and a donor login there. And if I go to roles, I haven't made a role yet, but if I go to schemas, in the list of schemas, there's a donor schema and an employee schema. The employee schema doesn't own anything.
Is that again? If you go to what? Now there's a schema.
Under schemas, security schemas. All right.
So are you in?
Yes, it's in the
You're in
database.
the database, okay.
And then the very, so this seems to have caused some confusion, these few lines.
Well, I think for me, it's the whole.
No, it's okay. What?
Just the clear definition. I need a hierarchical understanding of user schema role.
Right, so the login is to the server.
Mhm.
Okay, the schema is just a collection of
In the
objects
database.
in the database. And the user is database level as well.
The user is a person.
So the user is hooks to the login at the server. First they log into the server, and that's login is mapped to a user.
Right.
That's what for login, employee login. So it's like that. And then the schema is just attaching to the schema so that
And the schema is like a
schema is a
like group
collection of objects in the database.
objects are
Views, tables.
server procedures. Okay.
Yeah.
And the user is connected to the login to this, which is to the server. And
Right.
the user is to the database on the server.
Right.
And
And
then
you
the
always,
user has
that's what I was going to do next. I wanted to show, so the confusing part about this is I did these in script because last time we did them graphically. Last time we did the role,
we also did something before, which was on Windows.
right, we did a Windows user as well, which is a login, right? It's just another
Steve,
login.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So we create a employee schema, it shows up the DOMA login and the server login, right? Both, or just one?
so this is the server login where it says login.
Okay.
The schema is just a collection of objects. Right now it's empty objects, but that's, and then we have an employee login, which is mapped to the, this is the user. See how this says user, this says login. This level, login is server level. You have to have both with one caveat that there is a way to log directly into the database. But you don't have all the server functionality, which is interesting. You can't back up, you can't restore. There's all sorts of things you can't do if you bypass the server and go directly to a database login. And it's only possible since 2014. So, and are we using 2012? 14. It's called a contained, where you log directly into the database as opposed to the server. But you get much of the server functionality. Just anyway, the last thing I wanted to do was just we'll make a role just to show you database role, employee role. The owner is going to be DBO, so you could just, I'm not going to give them in. Securables, I'm going to do a search belonging to the schema, schema. I'm going to do OK. Search. We're going to standing in the way.
Oh,
And then I said all the objects belonging to the schema. If we want employees, I mean, we could objects. So all the objects belonging to the schema DB, which kind of makes it so in the schema we just created. Yeah. So this is new role. Name. Employee roles. Then go to securables. And then I did search And then over there, I did all the last, well, radio button, and then DBO, secure.
What you did general? You check employee schema and owner.
Well, just that. We could add a login there. We could add the employee login. So as a member, we could do add down here. And then in securables, if you wanted to, like, oh, what do we want to do? This is everything that belongs to DBO. The list of the views and things, and I'm just going to do select, 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 select. So they have selects on all these views. They don't belong to the employee thing. So if we look at all of those, they have all of those permanent. Again, much as it's easier to get a fix on it from the SQL script. Does that make sense to you? It's interesting though if we did something like oh, I'm going to just choose on grant request, and if I do select, I can go in and decide which columns I can see. I would say that's a stupid idea. Should create a view instead. But you can make it so that they can't see certain columns if you don't want.
Did you execute on one of them?
I did execute on USP. This one. I did see. I did execute on that one. You may not have all of these.
So execute on requests versus allocation. And what did you do for register
I didn't do anything.
or login?
I didn't do anything, although you could give them execute if you want. I'm not actually going to run these. I'm just showing you how to do them. Does it make sense how to do extended properties? You'd have to write your own. General. So this would be creating an employee role graphically. Again, I'm actually not going to. The way you'd create it in script is like that, and then you'd assign permissions. If you prefer the graphic way, you can. Again, it would be good to think it through. What it is, what permissions you're going to assign and on what. We tell you what, I will go over the basics of this again Thursday, just the hierarchy. Maybe not as much detail, just an overview, and then we'll work on the extra little pieces, and I'll give you time to work on the assignment then. The assignment is basically to go into MetroAlt, create some users, logins, roles, and just sort of set up a security. And I think it's a group activity because I thought you might want to talk about it, how you would set it up, what you want to do. And I think I've already set up the groups, just group 1, 2, etc. I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is.
We can still do it in groups.
Yeah, you could still do it in groups if not.
You did some of the cyber security as a group or individual.
We can make it a group of this now if you want.
Yeah, I still could make
And
it a
then we have a
group.
little bit of time to work on 1, 2, 3, 4 assignment as well.
Yeah, so there'll be Thursday. There will be quite a bit of open lab. I'll go over the assignment a bit, and then, but yeah, it'll be pretty much open lab. So
Good, we're gonna have, morning or afternoon?
it'll be a little bit in both. The morning to do the reports because I didn't get much time for that, and in the afternoon for the security. Again, in the afternoon, I might do a quick summary and talk about the assignment better. So if I go to people in groups, I do have the security group thing set up. Let's look at the assignment. It says it's a group assignment. All right. So, but we'll work on that next time. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. You're still a little time out. You're welcome to work on some stuff if you want. Questions before I shut this down?
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what my problem. I'm trying to import SIS.
Right. So it was a data. Your error says it's a data type conflict.
So I done in my home and
Let's look at your
I
computer.
tried
Here.
one more time. Okay, no, you don't have to.
Okay. So you need to change the data type. It says you have it to date time, and it needs to be DTDB date.
I did change.
And you might have to refresh all of your managers. Let me, yeah, we'll see you.
I don't know. Yeah, because this is different.
Looks like the video worked.